There's a visitation from outer space that isn't too pleasant. It's called a tornado. And we have the biggest tornado outbreak of the year that started this weekend, and it may not be over yet. 29 twisters hit the United States from Arkansas to North Carolina.
At least 17 people are already dead, and dozens of families have lost their homes. Dale Hurd has the story.
It's a 30-mile-long trail of destruction near Little Rock, Arkansas. Some of the worst damage was in the town of Mayflower, where several people were killed.
There is so much debris, it's hard to even tell what was what. This was a strong tornado.
Robert and Judy Garrett built a safe room in their home 2 years ago. It probably saved their lives. The rest of their home is gone.
Those are just things, and we're alive, and we're so thankful. We're so grateful.
Arkansas was the hardest hit, but twisters also touched down in Oklahoma, Kansas, Iowa, Missouri, and Nebraska.
Tornadoes on the ground.
In Baxter Springs, Kansas, as many as 70 homes were destroyed, and first responders went door to door, marking each home with an okay once they confirmed everyone got out alive. This morning, President Obama offered his condolences from Manila.
I want everybody to know that your country will be there to help you recover and rebuild as long as it takes.
Cleanup was just getting started in North Carolina in the wake of an EF3 tornado this weekend. An 11-month-old baby was killed, more than 200 homes destroyed.
It broke my heart because I lost everything. Thank the Lord for not having me here, because I probably wouldn't be standing here right now.
Before this outbreak, 2014 had been the quietest tornado season in more than 60 years. Not anymore. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Well, you think tornadoes are bad. We've done pieces about the grid, the electrical grid. We're so dependent on electrical power. And if there's a real solar flare, a solar pulse that comes upon us, or if somebody sets off a so-called EMT, we could be without power, without cooking, without lights, without transportation. It could be horrible. Well, we've got blackouts and brownouts on the grid, but it's not from the sun that's causing the problem. It's caused by bureaucrats in Washington. Here's John Jessup.
Get ready for higher electricity rates in the years ahead. A variety of factors will be pushing rates up. The Los Angeles Times reports they include new government regulations on toxic emissions, rules on greenhouse gases, state mandates for renewable power, technical problems at nuclear power plants, and the changing prices of natural gas. The paper says the government underestimated the impact of new federal regulations on coal plants, thinking they wouldn't cause many plants to shut down, but that proved to be wrong. Those plants are being replaced by natural gas, but its price is not as stable as coal. And Pat, some power officials also believe the U.S. could see more brownouts and blackouts in the years ahead.
Well, it's not just a question of the cost of fuel and so forth. Listen, these Greens, these environmentalists, I am all for preserving the environment, don't get me wrong, but these people are airhead fanatics. They don't have their life grounded in reality. So they dislike coal, so they say, well, let's just shift from coal. Well, you've got all these power plants operating on coal. Now they say, well, let's just make it tough for them to use coal. So the power companies say, okay, we'll switch to natural gas, but it takes a while. But the bureaucrats don't take that into consideration. So we've got brownouts, blackouts, and we've also got increased cost of electricity. So you're at home trying to make your budget, and the government is working against you over and over and over and over again. These people are setting up regulations which make it harder for business to operate and harder for the average citizen to function in a very complex society. And the thing that I am most concerned about, you've got two things. You've got domestic or foreign terrorism that could come and cripple transformers or cripple a power station. And you've got the chance of a serious solar flare, an electric pulse coming out of the sun that could do major, major damage. And we're not prepared for that either. Okay, John.
Pat, the U.S. is moving to impose more sanctions against Russia because of what's happening in Ukraine. President Obama made the announcement in the Philippines today. He says the move is in response to Russia's failure to help end the crisis in Ukraine. The sanctions will target high-tech military exports to Russia and companies controlled by those closest to Russian President Vladimir Putin. But some lawmakers are calling for even tougher measures.
To me, hitting four of the largest banks there would send shockwaves into the economy. We really aren't affecting, if you will, the upper middle class in Russia, a broader base of citizens in Russia at present. And I think, again, these sanctions on individuals are not having it's not creating the kind of pain within Russia that will cause Putin to change his behavior.
The U.S. is working with Europe on the latest sanctions. Pat?
You know, Senator Corker is a brilliant guy. He's a former mayor of Chattanooga. He's a senator from Tennessee, and he really has his finger on the pulse. He gets it, and so his analysis is tremendous. I was speaking to an investment banker a couple of days ago who suggested all we'd have to do was cut Russia out of the SWIFT system and their whole banking system would collapse. You know, it's true. I don't know whether the nations of the world are prepared to do that. But that is the Society of Worldwide Interfund Transfers, SWIFT, and it's the huge computers that handle all the computer transactions that go back and forth, billions and billions, trillions of dollars of transactions every single day. And if the Russians got shut out of that, their banking system would collapse. So there's so many things we could do if it really got serious. But one of the most important right now for the president would be to lift the restrictions on the production of natural gas, lift the restrictions on the condensing of natural gas, and the export of natural gas. And if we did something like that, we could affect dramatically the economy of Russia without a whole lot of strain. Why we don't do it? Well, it's because we've got guys in Washington who in charge of things who don't know what they are doing. Oh, well, there's something else that came out, and I can't believe what we've just heard, by the way, going on in the NBA, the National Basketball Association. The players are up in arms about the statement of an owner of one of the clubs. And here's that story. Here's John.
That's right, Pat. NBA players are hoping the league will quickly take decisive action against Donald Sterling, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers. Sterling allegedly made racist remarks in a phone call with his former girlfriend, saying, among other things, he didn't want her to bring black people to Clippers games. That brought strong responses from players and former superstars like Magic Johnson.
He's got to give up the team. If he doesn't like African Americans and you're in a league that's over 70% African Americans.
But USA Today reports the NBA's constitution and bylaws don't allow the league to simply take the team away. Sterling may be fined up to $1 million and suspended. The decision could come before the Clippers' next playoff game Tuesday night. Well, over in Europe, anti-Semitism is becoming more widespread amid a surge in popularity of extremist parties. Those are the findings of a study released by Tel Aviv University. The number of violent attacks against Jews around the world dropped last year, but the report warns racist and anti-Semitic attitudes are becoming more acceptable, particularly among young Europeans. And the report points to the increasing popularity of far-right political parties, especially in France, Hungary, and Greece. Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas spoke out Sunday about the death of 6 million Jews in the Holocaust during World War II, calling it the most heinous crime of modern history. In the past, Abbas has suggested the Holocaust has been exaggerated, but the reaction from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was dismissive.
Well, I think the difficulty is to reconcile that statement that President Abbas is making a few days after he embraces Hamas that denies the Holocaust and calls for perpetrating another Holocaust against the 6 million Jews of the State of Israel. So President Abbas has to decide whether he wants a pact with Hamas or peace with Israel. He cannot speak out of both sides of his mouth. He cannot embrace Hamas and say that he wants peace with Israel.
Abbas's comments came as Israel remembered the Holocaust and, Pat, as the latest U.S. attempt to forge a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians was on the verge of collapse.
Well, I said it before, I say it now, that is a chimera. It is not ever going to happen. And the sooner our State Department and our officials get off this kick, and I know George Bush and others have, forwarded such a notion, there's not going to be a two-state solution. There's not going to be a Palestinian state. They're not going to live in harmony with Israel. And why don't we recognize the West Bank is historic Jewish territory? It's Judea and Samaria. Let's call it what it is, and let's be true to history and be true to the Bible, and tell those people, Palestinians or Arabs living in that area, if you want to, you can be citizens of Israel, and if you don't want to, you can be citizens of Jordan like you were before the Six-Day War. It's just that simple. They're not going to, I mean, the idea of Jerusalem being split in half is not going to happen. So we continually get frustrated with this, and we just made an announcement saying we're going to move our embassy to Jerusalem instead of Tel Aviv. We're going to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, and we're going to move on with life. But until we do that, we'll continue to have these problems.
Heaven is for Real had another strong weekend at the box office, finishing number 3 with just under $14 million. So far, it's made just under $52 million in its first 2 weeks in theaters. And God's Not Dead came in at number 11. It's brought in almost $53 million since its release 6 weeks ago. Superbook has found huge success in Peru. The Spanish version of the Superbook series, Super Libro, premiered over Easter weekend in the South American nation. The series was listed among the top 20 most-watched Bible-themed programs on Good Friday. After the broadcast, the CBN Prayer Center received more than 1,000 phone calls, and the superlibro.tv website had close to 10,000 visits. So far this year, nearly 32,000 people indicated they prayed the salvation prayer after viewing the gospel presentation on the website. And that's good news. You can find out more about what CBN is doing around the world by logging on to cbn.com/international.